Yes, we've been having a great time here at the retreat here at the AU Ranches, sharing with parents and other family members of people with special needs. And one of the things that came out this morning is sharing experiences where we had a transformative experience from caterpillar to butterfly. It may have started out perhaps on the darker side, and working with our understanding of Christian Science and working through situations without giving up until things bloomed in a new way that sometimes was just awesome. And so we had this wonderful discussion this morning, and we're continuing with some others that wanted to join us this evening. So I could start off with an experience that was with my daughter Melanie, and when she was born, we had her birthed at home, and as soon as the doctor and midwife delivered her, they said, "Oh, she's got to go to the hospital. She's not the right color yet." And so once we got to the hospital, we only stayed overnight, but it was an experience where they did all these checks and tests and so forth, and they said, "Well, this child has Down syndrome," and we had no idea what that meant at that time. And so they told us what to expect, and it really set us back as far as not having any idea what we were working with. But the first few months, there was a lot of denial on our parts. When people would say, "Why isn't she rolling over yet?" or "Why isn't she sitting up?" or "Why isn't she doing this?" We would just go on to something else pretty quickly. "Oh, she's getting it, but not yet." And it finally dawned on us, with practitioner help too, that this is something we can work through, and we can expect healing along the way, and to appreciate the little steps that we were making. And so she didn't speak until she was 5, really. And so when she was 3, an opportunity came up that she could go to a school nearby that taught them how to use sign language, and that got her started at least telling us what her needs were. And then by the time she was 5, she said her first word, and every little step of progress began to indicate to us that if she could say, to me, if she could say one word, then she could say 2 words. Like the law of mathematics, you can always add 1. And that goes on to this day, 40 years later, that she just keeps coming up with new phrases and new things. At this wonderful gathering that we're having here, she's, to my notice anyway, offering her hand to shake hands instead of looking down at the ground when people would want to shake hands with her. She just wouldn't make eye contact, and now that's blooming. So this sense that love is universal in its adaptations and bestowals is a statement from Science and Health. And all through the years, there have been different adaptations that have presented themselves to make it possible for her to continue blooming, and that it shouldn't be a surprise, that it's expected. One thing I've noticed from being with the group here, there are a variety of different challenges, and to me, the value that I'm gaining, and this is my 2nd year here, but it's really heightened just in the last couple of days, is when we share with each other, or we watch how different individuals work with their family members. It's inspiring to say, "Well, why didn't I think of that?" That we can do that. To me, it's cheering each other on in a very silent way by just example. So we've had some wonderful reports this morning, and you had one that you were sharing that inspired us today. Would you mind?
Well, I was going to speak tonight, kind of different like
Good,
you did
good.
too. But one thing, we just had a hymn sing, and the last hymn that we sang was "It matters not what be thy lot, so love doth guide. For storm or shine, pure peace is thine, whate'er betide." And after Matt was born, that I just lived with. I thought, it matters not what be thy lot, so love doth guide. And that is what is important, is letting that love guide. And there's, like Chris just said, just this meeting together. I came last year, and it was Chris and I, as far as other parents. There weren't a lot of parents here. There were a lot of campers, but not as many parents. And this year, there's sisters, brothers, parents, and this morning, and the reason I'm here in this group again is just because I got so much from it this morning, hearing the rest of you talk about your experiences. I get emotional when I start talking about it, and I realize it's okay to be emotional, and I saw all of us get emotional with that, and it means so much to me to see others and to hear their stories of accomplishments, step by step, little things that are huge to us. I mean, little steps are gigantic steps for our loved ones. And one of the gigantic steps that Matt made when he was, actually he was 7 years old, and he was learning his letters. Well, I mean, one thing is that the PSL 195, I think it's called, anyhow, it's the least restrictive education, which meant that before, when Matt attended kindergarten, he had to travel 60 miles to a state school, and we insisted that we wanted to tuck him to bed every night. So he came back those 60 miles and thought, this is what all 5-year-olds do. But, and then the next year, we realized, okay, he deserves the least restrictive education, and that was not it. And there was a group of 5 parents, other parents along with us, and we found a school that was very open to having Matthew. And so, and then he was mainstreamed in, but yet, so he got to attend with other students and was so loved and so supported by them and by the teachers, and then also had his small class. And he, at age 7, learned, I can still remember the day that he was able to connect the letters to the sounds, and he was actually reading, and that was just a huge step. So I think these demonstrations that no matter how small they may be to others, how much they mean to us, and to be able to share with other Christian Scientists the support and see that. I'm so grateful for this RVRN that brings us together.
I could take off from that. I am working with some special needs adults, and it was a gift from God. It was a privilege for me in the beginning. I wouldn't have chosen this, but my son asked my daughter and I to leave his home because he wanted privacy for his family. And so I turned to Ann Vogus of Wellspring Gardens, and she provided shelter for us, and in return I work with the special needs group. And I find that the computer has been very, very helpful in working with them. The education today is vastly different from the time that you had to handle these problems of education with Matt. Today, I've found that, for instance, reading, there are all these different ways of teaching reading. And so I vary the experience. I'm working primarily with one of the special needs adults. And because I find that he is very receptive and he is willing to work with me. And I'm able to discern where his problems are, and I can provide a customized educational outlook. And like for instance, I had to teach him that you pay attention to the sound and the visual. You have to see the letters and recognize the differences between the letters. So right now I'm showing him I'm breaking down the letters and pointing out, like for instance, a B has a vertical line and it's at the left, and then you have the curved lines, and it's enclosed like this, and then you have two of those curved lines that are enclosed. So I really break it down so that he can tell the difference between the letters, instead of just assuming that he'll see them as a picture, and hear the sound. I was taught phonics when I was about 6 years old, and today, I realized that doctors have been teaching that you can teach your child to read from, let's say, 2 years old or even earlier, but for the ones who have had difficulty over the years, a customized education where you can notice the difficulty that the child is having, it works much better one-on-one. So I feel that we have opportunities with our children to do this one-on-one, but we have to share, that there may be these different problems that have to be recognized.
One thing that I really love about our family members or the campers that are here is that it's when you're teaching a class of, I've taught English as a second language, and everyone comes in not only with a different education level, but a different level of English understanding. So you've got maybe 12 people, but you've got 15 or 20 levels of things. And that's the same with the special ed students. Often there will be extreme giftedness, and then there are others who are struggling with letter sounds or something. So I love the magic in that kind of, that you can find those hidden gems. And we've been talking about some of those today, and when we've seen it this whole time we've been together, those gems, and what a pleasure it is to see that where others in the community or even among, in this room might have some preconceived notions, and then to see those gifts is just really great. But I love the idea you were talking about the butterfly experience, and I think it hasn't been that long since I've had something similar to that. My older brother is here with me this weekend, and he's older than me, so I really didn't have any part in his growing up, other than him being my brother. But he was raised, of course, by we were all together at a very young age, my brother and my sister and I. And then at the age of, I was 7 and my brother was 10, our father suddenly passed away. and it threw my mom for a loop. She had 3 children, had worked very briefly before she married my father, was really, really at a loss. And for the next, as I said, I think Warren was 10, so probably for the next 9 years, he just floated. He just kind of just got the education that was available. At that time, most of the schools had a special ed classroom. They were not mainstreamed, but they were always neighborhood schools. So we would walk to school together or whatever, and he just pretty much went along for the ride. And once again, I was younger than him, so I was off doing my own things. And I'll admit, very often was embarrassed by him. People would come up to me and say, "You'll never guess what your brother said." And I would just say, "Oh, you know," and also, to be very, very candid, there were some situations that he got himself into that were not appropriate. And it was starting to fall more to me. Oh, and then to throw the other loop in, my sister, who was the oldest and 5 years older than me and 2 years older than my brother, passed away suddenly as a senior in high school. Talk about a fog. My mother continued to just get by, and that affected our entire family, and especially my brother, because he really had no guidance, and he became a very angry young man, and was an excellent bike rider, which is something that might not have been expected, but he would ride his bike from the time he got home from school until it was dinner time and just visit people. That's why he's Mr. Social that he is now, I know, because he had a lot of different friends, adults friends, not many peers at all. And so at the age, the school, you're allowed to stay till you're 20, and he had some great teachers, and I know that they were really the majority of his life, really, that school experience. And so at the age of 20, when he walked across the stage with his diploma, which really is not a diploma for him at the time, but then what? And I was still in school. As I said, my sister was gone by then, and so actually that last year at high school, I was on the high school campus with him. Once again, very embarrassed by my brother. I had a boy that I was very keen on, and my brother would go up and say, "Hey, Steve, how you doing?" And we had fun playing last night. We had a pool table. Thanks for coming over last night. And everyone would look at Steve like, Warren. It was, and then I had to, Steve didn't last very long, evidently. So that was difficult for me. And then Warren, just a wonderful opportunity for him. He was able to go to 12 Acres in San Jose and really started to have some real focused training and love and support. And we'd been attending Christian Science Sunday School, so he was aware and loves Christian Science very much. But then I was off to college. I got married, had children of my own. Warren would, we'd see him at Christmas or Thanksgiving. We lived in a different area. So, I had really no part in his care. Probably not even 20 years ago, a little less than that. It was evident that, my mother is his conservator, and we said, you should be the co-conservator. But it was all on paper. It wasn't anything really important. But then more recently, my mother has not been able to care for Warren at all when he would come home. And for a couple visits, I kind of turned the other way and thought, well, they'll be okay. But I realized they shouldn't be alone. They shouldn't be there alone, because who was watching who, kind of thing. And so I started stepping up more and more and more, but started feeling a really sense of burden, because it became more more evident to me that there had been a lot of things overlooked in this wonderful man's life. Some social things, some academic things perhaps even, things that a family should provide. And I started blaming my mom for that. So as I stepped forward, and she was happy because she was feeling burdened too. She knew she wasn't really capable of handling things the way that she might have wanted to handle, whatever that might be. And so we're still co-conservators, but she, to be honest, can hardly sign the papers every year to be co-conservator. So it's my pleasure to serve as that. But once again, very heavy burden, very heavy. And then just recently, I learned this lesson many, many times, but the simple thought that no one ever asked me to be the shepherd. I get to be a lamb, and Warren is a lamb, and we are all a lamb, and I just love that idea. And what a freeing thought to know that we can go through. God is the shepherd, and we just have to follow. And so it's not up to me to feel guilty that this young man never really learned hygiene, the way I thought he should, or that he thinks if someone gives you a T-shirt, it automatically fits you when it does not fit, But he likes the T-shirt, so I was just thinking, and also something that I carried over from years and years of my mother's tutelage, and I don't want to bag on my mother. I mean, she's a wonderful woman, but just really was not prepared and didn't know who to talk to about things. We never wanted Warren to impose on anyone. And so when he would start to speak up, we would say, Warren, or when he would greet someone, we would say, Warren, and pull him back. And for him to be able to be Warren is just such a pleasure to watch, and for people to accept him, and then also to give people the opportunity to be who they want to be. If you want to let Warren tell you his life story, then that's great. If he walks up to someone else and they don't really care to hear it, know that they are adults and capable of saying, I have something else to do, if you'll excuse me. And that was a very hard lesson to learn, because I felt I had to be the fence or something, and protect them from him, protect him from them, or whatever. So that has been a real transformation. I know it's been coming all along, but to know that no one asked me to be the shepherd, and what a pleasure. Woo! So I'm just so happy to see Warren as he is. And I wish someone had sent it to me today, and I'm going to copy it and send it to everybody here. But there was a poem, it was in a journal years ago, but it was, and you might remember it, but someone dreamt at night that their child was beyond their reach or whatever. And when they woke, they heard the words, something like, let me be the shepherd. And so then both lambs were saved. And I think, oh, wow, that's not only the child that was being, the concern was over, but the person who was worried. And I just can't tell you how important that is. And sometimes we forget it. And then when we remember it, we go, oh, good, I'm glad to remember that, because it's loving for everyone. And so many times I've wondered, am I taking the easy road, not having him with me? Is it because, sometimes I would think it's an imposition. I have a beautiful family. I have 3 daughters that I've raised, and it would have been a different life if Warren had been in our home. But I feel guilty about that, and I think, well, what's the sense in that? Absolutely no sense. No. So we're going forward, and it actually has made a huge difference to my mother to know that Warren is here, and because she, bless her heart, really expects or would like contact every day. She's in a Christian Science care facility and so loved and cherished. But why didn't you call me today? Or when I walk in, and she was expecting me at noon, and I walk in at 1, and she gives me the cold shoulder, I go, pardon me, and I'm here. And she knew I was going to be away for a week, and at first, or close to a week, and at first that was not going to be okay. But when she knew that we were coming to camp, and this was a once in a lifetime, but I'm not going to hold us to that. This is a wonderful experience for Warren. then it was just totally changed her feelings. And she knows that Warren is cared for and loved, and that's usually her first question when I see her, is, how's Warren? And I said, I talked to him today, he's doing great. So they've got a very nice relationship, and he is so sweet with her and very supportive of her, and he is her inspiration, which is quite a switch, when you think that for so long she was just getting by with this wonderful young man. And now that she can look to him, and he tells her to straighten up, that God is your light, and just he has favorite quotes that he shares constantly. And so whenever he comes to Wednesday night at our church in Auburn, California, he's going to stand up and give his testimony and share his favorite quote. And I know exactly what he would say if any of you ask, so that's a task for you to ask him what his favorite quote is. But anyway, so it's been a slow transformation, but I think that even this week, these past couple days, that it has been more of the emergence of the butterfly. So, and it's just so wonderful to have an honest conversation, which I'm sure people have talked about here, is that there are a lot of things you don't talk about. And I remember years ago we went to a church service, and there was a little boy with a walker, and he was the cutest little kid I've ever seen, but they scurried him out. And I thought, oh boy, something has to change there. And I'm so thrilled that it is changing. So now that I've monopolized the conversation, but I wasn't here this morning, and I'm just, what a wonderful opportunity to share that. So.
And what you said, I think, reminds me another benefit of this RVR, and I think with Warren too, is that how, to me it was really important, and our circumstances were such that we could have Matthew be in our home until he was 21, and then he was ready, and he, like all young people at 21, he was ready to be on his own, and we had to learn to let go.
Yeah, how scary was that?
And
it's scary. I've let 3 people go, but I can't imagine letting Matthew go. Yeah.
And with Matthew, it was really wonderful because that was with the Rainbow Valley Ranch, and so that turned out for several years, and then he was on his own. And then his first job after he left the Rainbow Valley Ranch, he was a grave digger. Oh, wow. Who would have thought a grave digger? Yeah. But and he did that because it was one of these cemeteries that wouldn't allow the big equipment in, and so someone had. And so Matthew, how many years did you do that? 2 or 3 years, I think. 3
years.
3 years. And then also did snow removal and things. Wow. But he was so proud of having a job, and we were so proud of him doing it. And he was, it was a job that needed to be done.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was, so anyhow, but so then that letting go, and we thought that he would just be in New York for 2 to 3 years, and that he would come back. Well, it was 15 years before he wanted to come back, and then he did. And just here at RVRN now, Matthew, the week we came home from last year, each event, he's already talking about the next year's event, because he loves the connection of his friends such as Melanie and Nicole and James, and just all of these people that and now Warren, each time there's new people here, and he talks about his friends throughout the year. And I think even when something happens to me, that those friendships are going to continue. And Matthew has these friendships, so it's hard sometimes to let go, but yet it's so wonderful, like, to see Warren shine, and see Melanie shine, and see Matthew shine, and Nicole. It's just, and how the relationship building. The activities are wonderful here, but more important are the relationships that are happening through the activities.
I think I'd like to say something about our Christian Science beliefs that hold us together, encourage us, inspire us. We I think everyone would agree with me that we believe in seeing our loved ones not as the human family sees them. We don't see with human standards, but the standard we see is that each individual as God's child and the perfect child of God. God's creation is perfect. And so we see that the child, although the doctors may view the child according to human standards of development, we can see the child as the perfect, complete, whole child of God. That is our basis, and that allows us to learn more and more about God and His perfect creation, His perfect idea, and as we understand the teachings of Christian Science, taught by Mary Baker Eddy, the founder, the discoverer of Christian Science, the beyond the human picture, and relate to our child in a uplifted way. And I think it's important to bring this out in this presentation this evening.
Well, and I love that every camper here lives Christian Science. I mean, they are not here. Sometimes, let's face it, with the kids that come to summer camp here, it's because mom sent them, or it was because they didn't have daycare, or I don't know what. And but every camper here lives and loves Christian Science. Just really briefly, Warren has he has the opportunity to go to a day program every day, and I got a call a couple months ago. No, it was almost a year ago now that I think about it. The director of the day program was saying Warren fell and really got a gash on his head, but he will not allow the paramedics to touch him. And maybe you'll talk to him? And I said, and I guess he had been quite angry and adamant that he was a Christian Scientist and he did not want any medical attention. And so we talked really briefly, just Warren and I on the phone. And I thought I was no longer on speakerphone because it was so silent once we started talking. But I said, Warren, I know you love the golden rule, and you do unto others as they would have them do unto you. And so we need to be respectful, and this person is here to help you, and he's doing his job, his highest sense of right, and that's all he's doing. He's just cleaning up, things. And he said, okay, so I'll just let him go about his business. And I said, that sounds great. And I think I told him how proud I was of him, that he was a lighthouse, and he had the opportunity to share with everyone in the room what he knew to be true, and that's God's protection, God's love for him. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but then people started talking in the background, and I realized that everyone had been really holding on to every word that we were saying. And so they cleaned him up and took him back to his group home. And then a Christian Science nurse came, and because they had also told me on the phone that he was going to need stitches. And I said, I will let the care provider know. And I didn't say, okay, we'll race right down. I said, I'll let the care provider know that. And so he went back, and a nurse came and put just a big Band-Aid on it, cleaned it up, great. And at the paramedics, I guess, had wrapped a huge bandage around, and he looked kind of like he was coming back from the Civil War or something, or the Revolutionary War. Anyway, so that came off when he took his shirt off, and so they put the Band-Aid on. And a couple weeks later, it was Thanksgiving, and he came home for Thanksgiving, and he still had a Band-Aid, and we needed to kind of take care of things at night. But when we greeted my mom, and I said, Warren, why don't you tell Mom about your testimony, your healing, your wonderful healing that you've recently had? And, Warren, he said, it would be my pleasure. And then he said, when I got to the train station today, Carol was not there, but I waited patiently. And I'm going, thank you, Warren. That's so great. So to him, It was gone. There was no, and I don't know if you brought it up today, if he could really tell you about that healing, because it meant nothing. It just was just an inconvenience, and it was great. But, yeah, I said, thank you for telling everyone that I was late picking you up at the train station. So he loves Christian Science, and it's not, I mean, he's had the opportunity, the choice. You can make the choice. Is this what you want? And he has chosen Christian Science every time and has never been let down. So I just love that about him. Something he has chosen for himself. Yep.
This seems like a good time to wind it up.